Hey, Josh, welcome to the show. Is way you getting started? Give us a little background on yourself.
Yeah, Josh Wagner. Thanks, Brian. Glad to be here. I am enterprise account executive with an organization called LeadMD. We're a marketing performance consultancy, and I've spent my entire career either as an entrepreneur or helping build marketing and sales organizations and helping customers design ideal customer experiences.
Yep. And how'd you get into sales?
Oh, there's no traditional path to sales, as I like to say. Everyone kind of falls into it their own way. When I was in college, actually, I was in broadcast school, and I had a professor in a sales and marketing class say, listen, you don't strike me as the type of person who wants to work nights and weekends and make no money for the first 30 years of your career. Why don't you consider doing ad sales? I was like, all right, whatever, man, that sounds cool. And he said, I got a friend who's a GM at a radio station. Why don't you go talk to him? So I show up at this small piece of garbage AM radio station in Scottsdale, Arizona. And GM says, hey, Norm said that I should talk to you. He walks out, hands me the white pages and says, there's the phone. Here's the white pages. Have at it. And that was it. Like there was no,
That was your training.
that was, hey, you're an intern, but you're actually just going to go call people and try to sell stuff. So that was my first exposure to like, real sales.
Yeah.
And it was an interesting ride because I unknowingly at the time built my own little account segmentation and account ideal customer profile. So, after calling a few people the first week and not getting anywhere, I went to the talent and said, hey, listen, who's buying stuff from you guys? Like who's advertising with us now? What's going on? Give me a little run. And so what I found out, which if you know anything about Scottsdale, Arizona, was all of our customers were golf courses and boutique shops, which there are a lot of in Scottsdale, Arizona. So I just carved out a little ICP, built a little presentation, one for boutique shops, one for golf courses. And that's the only people I called. And I got some meetings, and I wound up being the top salesperson as a 20-year-old intern at this little radio station. And they offered me a job, and I said, F you, there's no way I'm working here. And from that point forward, I went out and started my own business after I graduated, which is sales in itself. But that was my start as a salesperson.
Well, I always find it ironic that people feel more comfortable being busy instead of thinking,
Oh, geez.
right? Because you could have started at A and just gone down and stopped at Z.
Yeah,
You'd be very busy.
very busy. Yeah, there's never a shortage of things to do in a white pages that looks like this. And I don't know, some audience may not even remember the white pages.
Well, today's even worse because the
Yeah,
internet, although you can't see it all, it's pretty big.
it's pretty big. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
expansive for
Yeah.
sure.
And I talk to people all the time. They go, who's your ideal customer profiles at this? How many are there? 10,000. Well, 10,000 aren't going to buy.
Yeah,
Who's most likely to buy?
yeah, exactly.
And then focus only on them.
Well, that's my favorite. Because so in my world, I sell to marketers a lot, right?
Yeah.
And ABM is a hot topic. And okay, we want to do ABM. Cool. So let's start talking about account profiling, account segmentation, and really doing some deep account tiering, account scoring, so that we can get to this space where we know these organizations have the best value.
Yeah.
And this is what we're willing to invest in going after those organizations.
Yeah.
And they're like, whoa, 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 whoa. I thought we were just going to buy some technology and, get a list from sales. Like, not if you want to do it right. That's not ABM.
Well, right. Because the whole idea of ABM is hyper focused,
Exactly right.
deep and broad within a small key number of people.
Exactly right.
Yeah. And I think what people tend to go after their dream accounts. Well, a dream account is different than your ideal account.
Very, very true. That's the CEO. You get those CEOs to say, we need to be doing more in financial services. Well, why is that? Well, we sold $1 million deal in financial services 3 years ago. We should do more of that.
They got a lot of money.
Right. If you ran the data, financial services may be a huge outlier for your business. It just could have been right timing. You hit them right, but they may be the worst. And that is the CEO is always with that gut feeling. We need to do more of that because we sold that one deal that one time.
Now selling to marketers isn't easy.
No, but it's fun.
Is it? What do you like about it?
Marketers they're a fun group, right? Like I'd rather sell to marketers than IT, right?
That's
and it's
sure.
just they're a fun group of people.
They talk. Yeah.
They talk, they've got personality, they're doing creative work for the most part, right? Like even if
Yeah.
they're in marketing ops, which is a lot of the work that we wind up doing, they're still, they're analytics focused, they're creative, they're trying to tie things to revenue. That world is growing so much, and what marketing is now is so different than it was 10, 20 years ago, that the diversity and the people that you talk to in marketing now is incredible.
But there's the hard part of it as well, because of the shiny object syndrome.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah, a lot of shiny objects. Attention span
Yeah.
isn't much better than salespeople.
No. Well, I mean, technology is one of those things that has both really advanced marketing and hurt it at the same time. The MarTech organizations have so much power and influence over the narrative that goes into the market and what people buy into as marketers, that they get really caught up in this silver bullet syndrome. It's like, oh, well, if I do this, if I buy this platform, it's going to magically wipe away all these problems. And at the end of the day, they're not doing the fundamentals and like talking to people in their organization. Hey, sales, we created all these leads that you don't like. This is, the age-old problem. Well, have you ever talked to them of like what does matter to them? And have they ever given you feedback that you've been like, oh yeah, well, this should be the definition of this. And if this happens, then I will do this. And we can set some real, like clear, explicit goals and SLAs in place for one another to hold each other accountable. I don't know. We don't want to have that conversation. If we buy tech, it'll figure it out.
Well, I mean, you're selling something that's pretty complex, because you're selling a service and has technology with it.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
And
you're kind of augmenting their capabilities, right?
Yeah. I mean, that piece of the business in itself is a complex sale, just because of that perception that, the sales reps and the tech companies do a great job of selling the dream, right? They really do. And I've worked with those guys and gals for years, and, they're some of my good friends and they're really good at their job. But what they don't want to give you is the reality of, this is what it's going to take to get stood up.
Right.
This is the process that you need to have in place. And if you don't, you're going to have to build it. These are the people you're going to have to get buy-in from. This is what adoption is going to look like. This, all of these different things. And then all of a sudden, the service lift to get your platform stood up is as great or more than buying the software. And they feel overwhelmed and defeated.
Right. It's like what Homer Simpson said, whoever thought a nuclear power plant would be so complicated?
Who'd have thunk it? Crazy thought.
What's your superpower as a sales rep? What differentiates you?
I am my ability is, I've always thought my ability to process information really quickly and then turn it into a relevant story is what makes me good.
Yeah.
And they always talk about, I think it's why I wasn't a very good sales leader, to be honest with you. So I was in a sales leadership role, and it's kind of like, and I don't want to compare myself to Michael Jordan because I'm not that good, but Michael Jordan was a shitty coach, right? Larry Bird wasn't, he's a good executive, but he wasn't a very good coach.
It's a different job. Yeah.
Right. So you have this expectation based on what you were able to do.
Yeah.
So I get on calls with people. I'm like, listen, they said this, you need to be able to quickly pull from your repository of stories, weave what they said into that story and make it good. And it was just like not happening. So I'd get frustrated.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think it's a powerful thing.
That's one of the classic traps of becoming like a first-time sales leader.
Yeah.
Because you want people like you to sell like you, because that's how to know how to sell.
Yeah, exactly. And that's not right. I know that. I just, it's the position I got put in.
And it's fine. It's actually perfect that you find your place in the world where you're good, you like doing it, and then you're successful at it.
For sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
And what gives you that capability of being able to take, because you deal with pretty complex issues?
Yeah, I think, one of the things that has served me really well was, like I mentioned, I started a business out of college, and I don't even know if I'd go as far now as to call it a business. I created a little bit of a job for myself where, as long as I was grinding it out, I was making some money. But what it did was give me business fundamentals, cash flow, profit and loss statements, balance sheets, margins,
Yeah.
like just general business stuff, so that if I'm in a conversation with a CEO, a CFO, whatever, I can hold my own and tie the true value of what it is we're trying to sell to the business and
Yeah.
speak their language, at least at the highest level, right? And that general business acumen has served me really, really well throughout my career, even though it was a technically a failed business that really wasn't a business that I started with a buddy with no experience, no contacts, and no money. Okay, you know, and it's funny when you go interview, which I've only interviewed 2 or 3 times in my life. That's the only thing they want to talk about. So talk to me about this business you started when you
Yeah.
were 20.
Well, it shows a lot of initiative. It's risky.
Yeah.
You, all the onus is on you. You can't really blame. You can blame other people, but it doesn't help.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, all you got is yourself, and you literally are eat what you kill. You talk about the full
Yes.
commission sales rep. A business owner is a full commission sales rep. Like
Yeah.
that's it.
So, what's the hardest part of your job?
The hardest part is, I think, with a lot of sales folks, especially when you're selling enterprise level consulting solutions, is just exposure to new conversations,
Yeah.
right? And then when you get them, because of where our business came from, like we have a really heavy marketing ops background in our organization,
Yeah.
is changing the perception of what people know about us in the marketplace. So it's not like we're not a known brand. And I think as a salesperson, branding is really strong. Like that's one of the things I want from marketing is if I call someone, they know the company name, because it makes my job that much
A lot
easier.
easier.
Right?
You're known. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. So one of the challenges I have is changing perceptions of what people think X, Y, or Z should be or should cost, or the level of effort that goes into it. Because as you said, marketers buy MarTech. They think it's a silver bullet. They could know this, they could know that. They might know us. They might have worked with us 10 years ago and we stood up Marketo for them as an example. And that's how they think of us. And now they're at a big enterprise and their account targeting is all out of whack. And I'm trying to bring them down this path. And they're like, no, you can set up Marketo. You know what I mean? So those perceptions are tough.
And how do you do that? Because I've interviewed your founder before. You guys
Oh, have you?
have, a pretty good brand.
Great. Yeah, thank you.
So probably the CMO may have heard of you guys
Mm-hmm.
and are trying to match. But I bet the first impression you get is we've got that, we're doing that, we're all set.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So one of the things that I think is great about how diverse marketing has become over the past 20 years is that really everything that somebody's doing in marketing, every item that's happening is dependent on something else.
Yes.
So if you want to set up marketing automation so that you can do better targeting of your messaging and say sending emails, well, if your account segmentation and buyer personas aren't set up and can be translated into that system, that's not going to be successful. So that's how you start to crawl your way out of a perception, is to highlight this thing that you want to do is dependent on all these other things in marketing. So at least at the bare minimum, let us understand what you have, because you said you got that, you're good, great, show me. And then, oh, well, we don't really have it documented. It's more of like something that we talk about, or, oh, okay, well, let's dive into that a little bit more. And then all of a sudden you could start to peel back little layers of, we got it, we're good, and expand that conversation into, well, you want to do this thing. It's required, dependent on this thing to be successful. And you said you got it, but you actually don't. So let's talk about that a little bit more.
Right. They've got something.
Right.
But
So,
you're not on the same page. You're talking about what they could possibly do.
right.
And they want to be comfortable, because
They do.
if they get a little uncomfortable, that means they got to do something.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the tough things in marketing is, more and more it's exposing what it is you're doing.
Yeah.
Brand marketing traditionally is tough to measure unless you're Coke.
Well,
right.
Even
that is still tough to measure. And, you look at traditional marketers who are used to that world where you can do a lot of things. And, we know 50% of our marketing is working, just which 50%, that whole thing.
Yeah.
Well, now everything's able to be tracked and measured. And you start to talk about some of these concepts and it's like, oh shoot, they're going to know what I'm up to if we do this.
Yeah. And who do you typically have this conversation with?
We've historically, if you've talked to Justin in the past, we've dealt with a lot of marketing ops directors and middle management type of folks. Where our organization is going and where we're getting traction is with the CMO. That helps a lot. And depending on their background,
Yeah.
you can get those conversations vary. What I'm finding more and more these days is that these initiatives are getting to the CFO.
Really?
Yeah.
And
And
and what flavor? What does it look like to the CFO?
it looks like, okay, how does this financially impact the business? Like, and really, right? Not just here's my ROI model that I built or whatever, but where have you done this before? What are the typical insights that I see from this type of work, and where does it impact the business? And you can bring numbers in. It's surprising. They're not as tied to the numbers as you think they are. Like, oh, it's $1 million lift. I put it in my calculator. It's obvious, right? Like,
Yeah.
they're actually not as interested as that. Is really like saying, okay, if you're going to do this, what am I going to know that I didn't know before? And then how does that impact the business? It's actually that simple. It's just articulating that, which is the hard part.
I bet. Because it's,
Yeah.
it is kind of touchy feely, because you get a lot of people in your space talking about category,
Mm-hmm.
brand, all of these things that almost aren't measurable, like reputation. Is reputation measurable? Or is
Sure.
there,
Yeah. Well, I do think it's interesting though, because, and it comes back to the storytelling thing, right? If you can say, well, listen, we did target audience research for this organization and help them devise some really great account tiering models. And within 6 months, there were 15 net new opportunities in the pipeline. Against your close rate historically, that's going to equal this. Even that is something the CFO is going to gravitate towards, because they are closer to those funnel metrics than the marketer half the time,
yeah.
because that's their world.
And it sounds like you go a whole lot deeper than most reps would. Most reps would then bring in the consultant or the pre-sales person to kind of explain the stories, the case studies, the examples.
Oh, that happens in our world too. We
Does it?
have
Yeah.
principal consultants that we leverage to help tell stories and things like that. I do pride myself in knowing my business. Like, I'm not a surface level person whatsoever.
Yeah.
And I think in some cases it's good. In some cases it's bad, because it's almost that you know too much.
Yeah.
And a lot of times I know too much, right? And you want to have all the answers to all the questions, when really that's bad. People aren't necessarily looking for answers to your questions. The old thing, like the sales rep who comes in and in the first 3 weeks, he has 3 discovery calls and just crushes it because they don't know anything and they just ask questions. And then all of a sudden they learn too much and they start trying to showcase all their knowledge and they suck again. But it is that, right? Like, you get to a point where you know too much and you have to throttle that back sometime. And part of my job is almost building the good cop, bad cop relationship and leveraging the other people in the organization to say, I need you to be this person. I'm going to be this person. You're going to say this. I'm going to say this. As much of sales right now, especially in the enterprise, is just quarterbacking and orchestration.
Right.
It's not a one person job.
Yeah. Because that principal consultant could give too much up, or
right.
Because it is a give and take, and you want the deal to continue. You don't
totally
be a transaction. We just consulted. Now they go think for 3 months and come back,
right.
See a smoke signal or not.
Sure. Right? Exactly. Yeah. And in consulting, you can use that person as leverage.
Yes.
Because that's your product, right? Oh, you want more access to that product? Then let's talk about the reality of the situation.
And then when they call him directly, you got to kind of like explain what to do when that happens.
Yeah. I'll never forget a deal early on at LeadMD where their CMO having a really tough, they were losing a marketing ops person who handled everything between their marketing automation and their CRM. And he was like, he's leaving. He's gone in 2 weeks. Can you help? I'm like, yeah, for sure. Let's talk about what that individual does. And we can figure out, what our staff augmentation services could look like. So we get on a couple calls. We're doing day in the life, kind of just walking through everything. And CMO comes back and says, all right, we need to do one more call about X, Y, and Z. And I said, no. I said, the next call is going to be after we have a contract in place.
Yeah.
And he paused. He said, all right, send it to me. And that customer is still a customer 6 years later with us. It's one of our longest standing customers. And it was literally, you just had to draw that line in the sand because you had provided so much value going in that it was like, all right, you're right. I need to either do it or not do it. And it was just kind of that line in the sand moment.
I think you have to have those things because I use, if you're serious, let's do this.
Absolutely.
Because it makes them admit that they're serious, or they're just kicking tires and shopping.
Yeah, no, I like that. If you're serious, that's a good one. Kind of put it back on them.
It's not threatening. It's just,
yeah.
Right. Because like if you're on the car lot, right, you might be a 16-year-old kid loving the new Porsche.
Yeah.
Right. And if the sales rep goes, if you're serious, it goes, well, I'm really just kicking tires.
Right. Because then you feel this obligation, right?
Yeah. I'm going to lie to this person.
Yeah. Like, oh, yeah, you're right.
Or they even internally have to admit how serious they are.
Yeah. It almost elicits that human function of reciprocation.
Right.
Like, I'm not going to screw this person. He or she's given me time. And now they're saying, if you're serious, like, ooh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, you're right.
It goes from the chit chat into something that closer to a transaction.
Yeah. That's a good one. I like that one a lot.
Yeah. And how do you identify like your A's? What do you look for when you're prospecting?
Well, we do try to drink our own Kool-Aid internally in the organization. Our marketing team, when you have a team of smart marketers that is your product, you try to tap into them every now and then, right? And we do every year analyze our ideal customer profile and our account segments. We have an account scoring and account tiering model. We have a data scientist internally, which is great. And he is a brilliant individual that gives us a lot of different insights into things. And we marry the qualitative and the quantitative. And that's really what it is. I mean, that's one of the things about marketing, that the pendulum swings so far one way or the other all the time, right? It's like, oh, it's all about the data. Oh, it's all about the people. Well, the reality is, if you don't marry the two and bring some reason to it, the data doesn't really mean anything. So that's what we try to do. We sit down, and then I sit down with marketing and say, okay, these are what the top tier accounts look like. These are the stories that we have from the last year that are going to resonate with these types of people. And here are the offers, the door openers that we're going to try to put together to go after these types of accounts. And, that's the model. We're outbounding consulting is not the easiest thing in the world. It's a little bit of a different beast, because a lot of consulting is, this hurts, I need to go find someone to fix it for me.
Very tactical.
Yeah. So, going after strategic transformational projects is not a small undertaking.
And how much of your stuff do you get inbound versus they don't know you, or they didn't convert, but
so you can call inbound, we can define it however you want, but in our business, I think of inbound more as referral. We're such a referral heavy business. And that's where having good relationships with your customers and as a sales individual, not just making sure you sell them the right thing, provide them the best value so that you can stay involved. Obviously, we want to sell them more stuff down the road. So that's part of it, but being able to tap into their network now. So if they're someone at an ideal fit customer, well, they've got friends at other companies that look like them. Are they going to trust you enough to open that door? And that's a big one for us, right? That referral network.
Because that is something that CMOs do that a lot of other professions don't do. They market more to other CMOs.
Totally.
Than they do the product.
Yeah. And as you know, it gets lonely at the top. Once you're a CMO, there's no one else in your organization who's a CMO.
Well, that's it. Because if revenue's going well, it's cool.
Right.
But
so yeah,
when it doesn't go well,
yeah,
one of the people is going. It's totally the VP of sales or the CMO.
Well, when you think about it too, there's only one person who's the CMO in the company, unless you're Microsoft and they've got like 7 CMOs. But so that's your peer network is small. And then the rest of your peers in the C-suite, frankly, they don't know shit about marketing. Yeah. They just don't. So you're kind of on your own. And that's why the CMO network is so strong, and being able to use that to expand is super important. And then there's the referral relationships with our partners, right? We do live in the MarTech ecosystem. It's very important to us. As much as I like to poke the bear every once in a while, it is very valuable and they're important. And, that referral network is super strong as well.
Well, that's what I've seen also work in your space, is kind of that partnership, because I'm sure there's a pattern between the time that they buy a piece of MarTech and the time the bubble is burst, where they like,
Totally.
this is more than we chewed off, well, more
Yeah.
than we can absorb.
Yeah. We have a saying in our business that they always come back.
Yes.
Even if they don't buy in on the first round in the market. Let's say it's Marketo, who we do a lot of co-selling with. They can't, either I don't do a good enough job of selling it, or they just can't bite off the amount of services that we recommend with the software purchase. Okay. So they purchase the software, they do the launch pack through Marketo, which is like the baseline stand-up. I know in 6 months, they're going to be reeling. So we had a conversation. I treated them well. They're probably going to see the light, and we can go back and revisit that conversation.
And when you were a leader, what do you wish you could have instilled in the reps to take them from B's to A's?
We're a small sales team. So for me to say we have B's would be really not a good thing to say. The other people on the team,
A- to A+.
Sure. No, we have a really strong group, and we produce a lot of revenue from a small amount of people. So that is the thing. I think as a sales leader, the thing that I would have done differently is really learned how to manage up.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, like that would have helped me manage down better, because, you've interviewed Justin, and I've known Justin for a long time prior to my time at LeadMD. But managing him was a different thing than just being a sales individual. And it still is.
Yeah.
So, and I wasn't good at it. So my inability to manage him well and manage his expectations well led to an inability to manage the team well. Yeah. So I actually think it's more of that coming down than the other way around.
Oh, that's a good point, because I think people do it the exact opposite way they should. They start at the beginning of the quarter with this pie in the sky dream number, and it just melts over 90 days.
Right. Totally.
And everyone's disappointed.
Well, because it's made up.
It's made up.
Yeah. It's not based on reality.
Right.
And that's, I don't want to pretend to know how to forecast software sales or anything like that, but so much of what happens gets based on just the board or the CEO or someone saying, we just got to do more.
Yeah.
And then just create slice territories up, make reps patches smaller, give them a bigger quota, no different it's just, that doesn't equal more revenue. No. It's not a formula that way. And in fact, if you enable your best people more and invest more in your best people, which is funny, you see all this, everyone talking about training on the curve and getting your C's to B's and your B's to A's. Okay. Guess what? Your 1%ers are 1%ers for a reason. Yeah. And I bet you if you put a little bit more, they always want to be better. Yeah. If you give them something that's going to make them more money, they're going to adopt it faster than anybody on the other side of the curve. So guess what? Roll out that new thing that's awesome with them.
Yeah.
Let them go run it. Yeah.
What would keep you on fire?
Totally. And they're really receptive to that.
Right. And we'll do the best we can with it.
Yeah, for sure. I totally agree with you.
Yeah. Cool. Hey, I appreciate your conversation today. Where can people go to connect with you and learn more about your company?
Yeah. So leadmd.com is where we are. Like I said, marketing performance consultancy. If you want anything more from me personally, you could check out my podcast, Love Selling, Hate Sales, lovesellinghatesales.com. And I think that would be great to have you. Thanks for having me, Brian. I really appreciate it.